I would like to say good evening to everybody. My name is Patty Frazier. I am the New York State PTA Treasurer. And joining me tonight to host tonight's session is Dana Welch, our Membership and Insurance Manager for New York State PTA. Also joining us is New York State PTA President Dana, who would like to say a few words.
Hi, everyone. I had a lot of trouble logging in tonight. I don't know why. I was the only one in the Zoom room for about 5 minutes and could not believe that nobody was showing up. So Patty sent me the link, and so it says that I'm Patricia Frazier, but I'm not. I'm Dana Platon, and I'm really happy to be joining you tonight. My thanks to Patty and Dana, but also especially to Jamie, who is representing AIM tonight, and she's lovely. We've worked with her for years and AIM for years. And they provide the very best coverage. I can't say enough great things about them. We've used insurance carriers in the past, and there's nobody that even comes close to AIM. So thank you all for joining us. And I hope that you learn a lot tonight. Use the chat box to ask questions. And also just a little commercial for our Summer Leadership Conference, which will be in July. The theme is There's No Place Like PTA. And you've already been getting information about that. So click your heels together and join us in Oz, which is also known as Albany, the Desmond Hotel. And we hope to see you in July. So any questions for me? I'm here, but really tonight it's all about insurance, and Jamie is the one who's going to be able to answer all your questions. So again, welcome everybody. And I'm going off camera so I don't distract anybody. And thanks again, Jamie, Patty, and Dana.
And thank you, Dana, for joining us. And we are very pleased to welcome Jamie Fagan, President of AIM Insurance, who's joining us tonight. She leads the daily operations at AIM and is always seeking new ways to better serve those that they insure, especially our New York State PTA units. As evidence of this, she has worked closely with us to design tonight's presentation so that together we can present the best information to our local leaders. AIM has been an incredible partner to New York State PTA and our units. In fact, they participate in our Strategic Alliance Partner Program at the presidential level. Some of you may have had the opportunity to meet founder and CEO Elgin Allen, who joined us at the New York State PTA convention to help us celebrate our 125th anniversary. Elgin, Jamie, and the team at AIM are more than partners, and they truly believe in the mission of PTA and are always willing to assist us. Most of you should have received our email on Monday in which we outline the enhancements to the New York State PTA insurance program. We will provide greater detail in this presentation, which will be followed by your questions. As we move through the presentation, please put any questions you have in the chat. We'll address those at the end, along with any other questions you may have. And so now, Jamie Fagan.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you for that warm welcome as well, Dana. We are very happy to be here. I know Elgin was having a little trouble, but he should be here anytime. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know that you can see it.
Looks good.
Got it? Okay. Well, I just wanted to give a brief introduction about AIM for anybody who doesn't know who AIM is. We have been insuring PTAs since 1989. So we're at 33 years now, and it's all we do. We've been doing it for 30 years. We don't insure, lots of different, types of programs and other things. Nonprofits, specifically parent-teacher groups, is what we do. So we have a lot of pride in the fact that if you call us, we answer the phone on the first ring or the second ring, but we don't have a phone tree. And we really understand PTA business, and we're very experienced in all of the challenges that you face as a PTA leader. So we're very happy to be here. And with that, I will start our PTA insurance presentation. Okay, so the New York State PTA insurance package that you have as a unit includes the following coverages. So general liability, crime, and directors and officers. And we're going to get into all three types of coverage in a little bit more detail. But I want to highlight that this year there's been a change. General liability has been enhanced. It's got, the coverage is broader, and directors and officers the same. We have broader coverage this year. So that's something to pay attention to as we go through. So first off, general liability. General liability protects you against lawsuits resulting from bodily injury and property damage. So if someone, a child, anyone really gets hurt at your event, or you damage property and you're held liable, whether it's the school gymnasium or a ball flies and hits someone's car at one of your PTA events, those things fall under bodily injury and property damage. The general liability policy also includes a medical payments limit. And we kind of see this as a little bit separate because you don't have to be in a suit to access this coverage. So if someone just gets hurt, falls down, it gives you easy access to medical payments, which is really positive because it deters a lawsuit. So if a child gets hurt, maybe they, knock out their front teeth, or, heaven forbid, what could happen, but they don't intend to sue the PTA. They just need a little help with the medical bills. The medical payments component of general liability steps in, makes it really easy for you to access those medical payments. The next thing is hired and non-owned auto liability. This is the new portion of GL this year, and you have a limit up to $1 million. And hired and non-owned auto liability is probably one of the most misunderstood coverages. So I'll try to summarize it as simple as possible, which is hired is for the autos that you hire. So if you rent a van to take some students somewhere, or you charter a bus, anything that you hire or rent, basically it falls under hired and non-owned auto liability. Keep in mind, it's just liability. It's if someone is hurt in that transportation. So it doesn't cover physical damage if that auto is damaged in the course of your event. Non-owned is the second component of the hired and non-owned. And that essentially means it's an auto that's not owned by the PTA. In other businesses, you might see that they have owned autos, but I know most PTAs don't have owned autos. So it's not owned by the PTA, but it is used in the scope of your business. So this would include a volunteer driving their own vehicle to, do some type of errand for your event, or just in the scope of your PTA business. So I'll leave that there, and you guys can ask questions if you want about hired and non-owned auto, but that is new this year. I think Patty will talk maybe a little bit later about, we still advise you not to take on a lot of transportation liability because it is higher risk. And, even at AIM, we advise you to stay away from it where possible, but this coverage is there to supplement losses that may occur. The general liability protects PTA members, volunteers, and employees. So it's very broad in that way. If your volunteer causes a loss, the general liability will cover them, defend them as well, just as it will one of the board members of the PTA. You have a $2 million per occurrence limit with no deductible. So that means that each and every PTA has a $2 million limit and no deductible in the event of a claim. So with that, I will go to the next coverage. Actually, sorry, this playlist of events. This is in the insurance guide, and we like to point this out because it's kind of a quick highlight of some low risk, high risk, don't do it kind of things. And so we break this down into stop, play, and pause. And you'll see that the pause, which is yellow, that's a cautionary. That means your policy likely covers it, but it's high risk. So for instance, we've got animal rides. So you can only imagine what could happen there and why that might be high risk. But then other things like cakewalks, that's a green. So that's a pretty low risk included, not a lot of things to be concerned about. If you do have a potentially high risk activity, we would recommend that maybe if it's a bounce house, you consider a waiver. But again, this playlist, which can be found again in the insurance guide. It can give you a good feel of when you should be concerned about risk and when you can just go forward, march ahead with your event. We are happy to provide a copy if you want to contact AIM as well. With that, I will go to crime. So crime insurance. This protects your PTA money against embezzlement, robbery, and theft. The great thing about this is that it protects anybody in the PTA who handles your money or has access to the money. So if you have a volunteer who's collecting cash at the front doors of the carnival and you entrust that volunteer to deposit the money in the bank account and they don't, and you have a clear proof that that didn't happen, you are covered for that person handling your money. So there are what we call position bonds, where it only covers the treasurer, it only covers the president, but this policy covers anybody who handles your money. So that's a really positive thing. The bond limit is $50,000 and there is a $250 deductible for any claim filed. The next coverage in the package is directors and officers liability. And it says enhanced. This one was substantially enhanced this year. Previous to this year, all PTAs were sharing a single limit of $2.5 million. We don't see the same frequency of D&O claims as what we do with GL or with a crime coverage, but this is a really important coverage. So this year, every single unit has $1 million in coverage and a $0 deductible. So previously there was a fairly sizable deductible, and this year there is no deductible. So that is a really positive enhancement to the directors and officers liability. I want to talk a little bit about what directors and officers liability covers. So in simple terms, covers all your officers from lawsuits resulting from wrongful acts. Typically, this is going to cover committee members and anybody who has authority in this type of role. Covered acts include misleading statements, negligent acts, discrimination, and misrepresentation. One of my favorite examples to use for directors and officers liability is the PTA meeting where somebody got a little bit unruly. So almost all the directors and officers liability claims that we see are very well-meaning directors and officers who have made a decision on behalf of the PTA and somebody took an issue with it, but they thought they were doing the absolute best thing for either the members or the organization, and it just wasn't well received by maybe a single person. So my example that I like to share is there was a PTA meeting and they knew that there was a particular member who typically would get a little unruly and out of control. So they asked some campus police to attend the meeting just to protect the members of the PTA in the event that this person got a little out of control. That happened. They were, acting out. And so the PTA asked that they, please be escorted out so that they wouldn't, cause any further disruption, and they sued the PTA for a violation of their civil rights. So perfect example of, you look at that situation and that PTA probably made the right decision in that scenario, but they're still having to fend off a suit for a civil rights violation. So there are other examples, but again, there are almost always a director and officer doing something for the PTA, building a playground, doing something, and somebody doesn't like something about that decision. So now I'll talk a little bit about optional coverage upgrades. So the three coverages that we just talked about, crime, GL, and D&O, those are all included as part of your New York State PTA package. It's a wonderful, very well-rounded package. It's basically what I would recommend to anybody. And then there are a few optional coverage upgrades that may or may not be necessary for your unit. But the first one is to general liability and its extended medical payments. I'll talk a little about it a little bit in more detail, as well as media liability and the property insurance. So extended medical payments. This coverage is the same as what I talked about earlier, in that you have access outside of a suit. So if somebody gets hurt, you have easy access to getting reimbursement for out-of-pocket medical expenses. It deters a lawsuit, so it's really good to have. The reason that we talk about this separately is because you can increase this limit if you would like. So if if you're doing high-risk activities on a regular basis, bounce houses, inflatables, animal rides, that's something you do on the regular, you might want to consider increasing your medical payments limit because you are more likely to have a higher dollar injury. So we talk about a little bit why this is important. And it's just, again, if you do have those higher risk activities, you may want to have a larger limit and you want to deter lawsuits. So if you can step in and help with medical bills, that will definitely deter a lawsuit. So it's a really positive coverage to have. And again, just as a reminder, your policy covers $5,000 in medical payments per person as it is. And then we offer up to a $50,000 per person limit. The next optional coverage is media liability. And this protects you from lawsuits resulting from social media. So Facebook, your website, any of the social media outlets like Twitter and Instagram, anything that you post there, and it could be posting photographs without getting a release, using a trademark, maybe you post for an event that you're having Chick-fil-A cater and you didn't get the rights to use Chick-fil-A's logo, or it could be any type of logo that you didn't have permission to use. Could be misrepresentation or making confidential information public. So, you're posting something about an event and you post everybody who's going and maybe some information about those people thinking it wasn't confidential, but it was. They take issue and sue you for media liability. So those are a few examples of things that we see happening with social media and PTA websites. So again, you're welcome to call us and get a feel for if you think you have enough traffic to your social media sites, or you're posting off, with enough activity that it may be causing you some liability. The next one is property. So this covers things like popcorn machines, auction items, fundraising merchandise. We have a lot of PTAs that say, well, we don't really own any property, but 9 times out of 10, they have some type of fundraising merchandise in their possession at some point. And if that fundraising merchandise gets stolen or ruined while it's in their possession, that can be a pretty big hit for a PTA, as you all know. And that's probably 50% of the claims that we see are probably fundraising merchandise that something's happened to it. So it covers any personal property owned by the PTA. And this is damage due to an accident, a theft, or a natural disaster. This is probably our least purchased policy, just because we don't see quite as much property among PTAs. But if you do have these types of items, or you take possession of a high dollar amount of fundraising merchandise or auction items, it's definitely something to think about. That wraps up our insurance package and all the coverages that we offer. Next, I want to talk about the new online renewal process. So renewals are coming up on 7/1. Very exciting. We have a portal through our AIM website where we allow insureds to renew, request certificates, view the coverages that you have. There's a variety of things that you can log in and do. So this year, we are enabling online renewal through our portal for all of our New York PTAs. So if you don't want to renew online, we're still going to send the same renewal PDFs that we always have, and you will have that option. But I'm going to walk you through how to renew online, because it is really easy and it's quick. You can still make a payment with a check if you want to. You don't have to pay online, but you can. So I will walk through those details now. Okay, so the steps to renew online, you'll first get a renewal email. This will go to all the presidents, and this should go out either the end of this week or the beginning of next week. You'll open the email and there'll be a link to renew. So you'll just click that link in the email and it'll take you to our AIM website. And at the top menu bar, you'll see login and you'll just click login. From the login page, it'll take you to a My Policy page, and you can see that screenshot here. You will need to click Forgot Password. I'm not sure if anybody has ever logged into our portal, but I'm assuming that most of you guys do not have a login. So when you get to the My Policy page, you click Forgot Password so that you can reset your password and get access. So you will be prompted to create a new password. Once you select Forgot Password, you'll create that. You'll follow the steps to create the password. They'll send you an email. It'll have your, I guess that was in the previous step. Sorry about that. You'll follow the steps to receive a temporary password. So yes, once you get that in email, then you go back to the page and create your new password. Sorry about that. Once you're logged in, you will click Renew Policy. So it'll have My Policy and you'll have a few links of things you can do. So Renew Policy will show up as the top one. From there, you will come to a coverage page that is called the Renewal Form. And this will have all the coverages available to you. The New York State package will be automatically selected. So as you can see here, the general liability will be selected, the higher non-owned, the abuse, professional liability, bond, all those coverages that are all wrapped up into the New York State package will all be selected. You will have an option to, if you want to add any of those optional coverages that we talked about, you can just click them here and then click Purchase Coverage. From there, it will take you to a page with fields of your contact information, unit name, email address, all those types of things, and you can update that information if anything is not correct. And then it will take you to a page that looks like this, where you review the list of coverages. It'll give you a cost total at the bottom, and then you click Submit. And that's it. The steps seem a little longer, but it's actually really easy to click through. You can choose your payment type. Again, it will give you an online check. You can mail the check. If you select to mail the check, it'll send you an email with the rundown of your coverages and the cost due, and you can just mail that in. The certificates of insurance, those will be mailed to the unit president at the end of June for anyone renewing prior to 6/15. So we would love for anybody who can to renew prior to 6/15. Your renewal expiration date is 7/1. But again, if you can get them in before 6/15, we will be expediting those certificates. So especially if you have an event coming up or you're already being hounded for a new certificate, try to get those in early and we'll get those certificates out as soon as possible. If you renew closer to 7/1, we will get those certificates out in early to mid-July. And just a reminder that the certificate should be passed to the 2022-23 president, just so that information changes over. Hopefully I didn't go through that too fast. Another reminder, this is how you can contact us. You can call us anytime, go to our website or email us. We don't have a phone tree, and this is literally what we do every day. So we are very happy to help. Love to answer any questions about how to renew online. And that's the end of what I got. So I will pass it back to Patty.
Thank you, Jamie. Actually, what I'd like to do right now is if we could go back a couple of slides to the renewal process online. We have a couple of questions right away that we would like to talk about there.
Sure.
Okay, so we need to go to page 12 with the renew temporary. Okay, so here we are at this page where we want to click on AIM to log in, and we got the bottom of the screen here. Do we, in order to do the forget password, do we have to first put in our insured number? Or do we click forget password first?
I believe you will need to enter your insured number.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that is in the email.
Yes, great question. That is in the email.
Okay. So then, okay, so we're gonna click the forget password. And then we'll go to the next, that will take us to the next slide, right?
Mhm.
And we're not going to receive an email. We're just going to see this slide where we can put a new password in. Or
You
will we get an
receive
email?
Yes, you'll need to follow the prompt. So when you click forgot password, it'll have you, it'll send, if your email matches what's in our system, it'll send you a password reset link. You'll open an email, click it, and then it will take you back here to, it'll give you a temporary password. You'll put it in, and then it'll prompt you to change your password.
So it's going to send that email almost to the same, whatever's connected to the insured email. So if,
Correct.
even if I log on with a different email address and do this, because I received the email, I still have to refer back to the email that matches the insured number.
Well, if you're receiving the email, you should be, the emails that
That's-
we're sending these to are the emails that are in our system. So if you forward this email to somebody else and they don't have access to that email, it's not going to work. So the email that we have on file is where the temporary password reset is going to go.
Okay. And that's where we are sending the email to say it's time to renew.
That's correct.
So we want to keep that chain together. Okay, great. So I just wanted to just point out one thing that you mentioned, that our current policies will all expire on June 30th and our new one would take effect on July 1st. And one of the things we want to talk about is the continuation of coverage. So we really don't want any of our units to have a break in their coverage. I know that a lot of PTAs don't do a lot in July or August, but one thing we want to remind you all is that we do have the a fidelity bond, which is a commercial crime coverage, because your money still is part of your unit. Even if you're not doing anything with your money, it's still there in July, either in your bank account or wherever, and you need to protect that money. So that, you know, that is an important part of the coverage that we are offering. So that is important. And of course, officers, the D&O policy, officers will be doing work throughout the summer, especially. So again, we want to make sure that even though you're not actively out in your school community, maybe PTAing, there is a lot of PTAing going on behind the scenes. And so the coverage still remains important. And then I just wanted to talk about the property coverage, the property policy. It has a funny name. Jamie, what is that name?
Inland Marine.
Yeah. So everyone's familiar with that name, because we always get questions about that. Like, why would I need Inland Marine when I live in central New York? Well, this is why. It's really just a name to cover this coverage for your property. So again, that is considered an additional coverage. Can we go now to the slide that has the list of the coverages that with the check boxes?
Sure.
Just want to take a look at that. So here we are at that screen. And so you can see, again, the boxes that are checked. So it starts out with the general liability checked. You'll receive that. The next section is the extended medical payments that Jamie outlined. And so here's where you will get the $5,000, which is part of the policy. That's why it's listed as $0. But if you wanted to increase to any of the limits, this document will tell you how much extra your policy will be. So currently all of our one building units, the policy is going to be $350 this year for the premium. But if you did add on any, this is the amount you would be adding. So again, that's what you would be adding for medical payments. If you wanted to do the social media liability, it details several levels there that you can take advantage of. And then finally, at the bottom, that's the business personal property that we were talking about. It's listed as Inland Marine, so that those are the levels of coverage there. So again, you want to assess what you have. I mean, some of our centralized units that are, again, cover a whole district might have some property that they all share, like Jamie pointed out, a popcorn machine, a cotton candy machine, those kind of things that shift from school to school to be used, and it might be worth protecting that as well. So that's where you'll be able to select those. And once you click those boxes and hit that purchase coverage, it will expand what, the payment page is asking. Do we need to select the $5,000 limit on the clicking? No, that's already automatically covered in the click box above. I see a lot of questions in the chat. So also I do want to point out that if you don't have a building, so if you are a SEPTA or SEPSA unit, the charge for the insurance package is $120 this year. And that is because your building liability is covered by the local PTAs in your community. And so that we don't want to duplicate that coverage. Okay, so. Okay, this is a question from one of our units, and Jamie, I might need help on this because I'm not sure what totally this means. So if the district requires a CG 2026,
Additional insured endorsement.
okay, if you could cover a little bit about that, would be great.
Sure. So yeah, it's really common that your district, your county, your city, anybody that you're having an event with may ask to be added as an additional insured under your policy. There's no charge to do this. You just need to notify us. A lot of districts will already, if you requested a district in the past, it may already be on your policy, but you can reach out to us and we can add it. Usually it'll happen same day or within 24 hours. What it does is it extends coverage. So let's say it's a district, and if they get sued in connection with your event, your policy will extend coverage to them. So you do want to be careful about who you give this to. So for instance, a vendor, let's say, an animal ride vendor, we keep coming back to animal rides, but you want them to have their own insurance. You don't want them piggybacking off your policy. So if they ask you to be added as an additional insured, that means if something happens in connection with your event and they cause a loss, it will extend coverage to them, and you do not want to do that. Now, if a district, you're probably using their gymnasium or their facilities or something, makes sense that they would want you to add them onto your policy, sorry. And that's, again, no problem. It's free of charge. You just contact us and we will add it for you.
Thanks. So I know we have some questions going into the chat, but also if you need to, you could raise your hand and we could probably manage it that way, though the chat box is the easiest. So just to clarify, the sample that we have on the screen right now is simply that. It is, it is showing what a one building unit purchase coverage screen is going to look like, because that's our number one out of all of our groups that we have insured through New York State. Mostly we have one building. So if you are a SEPTA or a SEPSA, your purchase coverage will look different. It will reflect the $120 that we will be paying towards the premium. So it will look different. And the same if you have additional buildings. If you have more, again, there's an additional charge for each building. So if you're a 2-building unit, 3-building unit, your first building is $350. Your second building will be $220. Your third building, another $220. And again, that's to eliminate duplicate coverages. So there is one coverage that covers the whole group, and then we have to have coverage per building. So that will be reflected in your invoice that you receive. So AIM is taking care of all of that and making sure you get a personalized purchase coverage screen. So no, we don't need to select the $5,000. And then I would like to ask Pam Miller, if you wouldn't mind unmuting. And you have a question here about paying $300 last year. I just want to clarify, that was the coverage last year was $300. We do have an increase for this year.
Well, but in the recent email, it said the SEPTA units were only paying 120. So I want to know if that was in effect last year. We have, our SEPTA is a new organization. She paid 300, not the 120.
Okay, I'm gonna give you my email address and I'm gonna give it to everybody. Can you please email me that? Because actually the charge for a SEPTA last year was $100. And if
Okay.
you're a newly chartered unit, we waive the fee
Yeah,
for
I
that.
was just saying, so if that's the case, I want to make sure AIM is aware of that. At the time, she paid over the phone, I think. So
So
wanna
you
make
should,
ours-
if you're a newly chartered unit, you shouldn't have paid at all. So if you, I'm gonna give you my email. I'm gonna give it to anybody who has any questions later on about insurance or at any time, that you can reach out to me and I'll work with Dana and Jamie to get answers. So
Okay.
if you could just email the details to me at treasurer@nyspta.org.
Okay,
Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
no, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to talk now about, we have a couple of questions related to the play, pause, and stop list. So the red, green, and yellow. So again, we've talked a little bit about risk. And one of the things that we, as a PTA, has been a longstanding PTA tradition for an insurance program, is that we all want to make sure that we together are minimizing risk as much as possible. And as a result of us minimizing risks, we are able to offer our insurance package at a very reasonable price. So one of the ways we minimize risks is by using our play, pause, and stop list. So again, play, all the green, move ahead, as Jamie said. We do have some caution items here. And when we have those pause items in yellow, we really want that to signal to you as a PTA when you're planning your events to really have your executive committee, your executive board, really consider, is this something that your PTA wants to offer? There are some caveats to the pause that will be on the second page of this. That you can look into. You can confer with AIM as well, just to clarify the actual activity that you're doing so that they can help to make sure that you're covered appropriately. But again, with the pause, we really want people to understand the risks involved and then make a good decision on behalf of your association. I would say the same thing about the red light. For most of these are things that, Jamie, if you can just clarify for me on the red light, is, again, it says contact AIM for more details. These are highly risk, and most of them we would say that we, as PTA, these activities should not be funded through PTA.
Yeah, and in fact, everything that's red in the stop list, those are all excluded from the policy, with the exception of transportation, only to the extent that we talked about in hired and non-owned auto. So you shouldn't do anything on the stop list, with the exception of limited transportation.
Okay, and we're going to talk about transportation in just a moment. I just want to cover, again, just going back to the additional insured. And if I'm not asking this question right, I'm going to ask the questioner to jump on with us. Is it possible for a council, so a council covers 3 or more units, to purchase a policy and add district buildings as additional buildings? Is that even required? All of your units should be covering the district buildings, the district schools. So Douglas, I think I'm going to need you to come on and help me. We do provide an insurance policy to the councils at no cost that
Yes,
covers.
I realize that
their
the question
efforts.
came up when the rate went up to 350. But then there was the extra thing about additional buildings. So the question did come up whether or not the council could get a policy for the entire district and then pay per building, pay the extra $220 per building.
Okay, so the policy where we have the 350 for the first building and then for the second building, those are for centralized units that cover a whole district with one overseeing PTA. So your local buildings will all need a policy. And then the council, once, the council then also receives a policy that is no charge to the council to cover your activities. That's almost like supported by your units in your district. So I would say the answer to your question is no.
Okay, thank you.
But again, if anybody wants to further discuss that, if you, as a group, as a council, I urge you to reach out to your region director, or you can send me an email and I'll work with your region director and we can, talk to the group as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Yes, thank you for this next question, Joanna. Yes, so we're in that transition period. So we are sending out the policy now, which is typical because we want everybody to be in place by July 1, but we do know your new officers also don't take office until July 1. Elections are happening now, April, May, and June. So we are asking the current officers to handle getting the policy in place. And yes, anything that you receive from AIM from that moment on, if you're as a current president who's not continuing on, as a current treasurer who's not continuing on, if you could pass that paperwork on, it would be greatly appreciated. Any of the certificates you receive, any emails that you have, it would be actually just a wonderful gesture on behalf of the association that you're working with now to pass that on to the incoming officers.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. That was a great question. I should have had that written down. Okay, so we're going to talk about one quick thing regarding to our fidelity bond. One of the things that we're asking for there to maintain that is two things. One, that the unit can conduct their annual audit, and two, that they conduct monthly reconciliations. Conducting an annual audit is not new. It's not new since we started working with AIM in the last 5 years. That has been part of your bylaws for many, many years. And actually, most of what's contained in your bylaws is related to nonprofit 501c3 laws and not necessarily guidelines that PTA created. So again, the requirement for an annual audit is actually part of your IRS 501c3 regulations that you need to follow. So an audit should be happening but again, it also does support your policy here as well. So it's doubly important now to do it. We have some webinars. We have a webinar online, a couple of them actually, related to conducting an audit. Feel free to access them, as well as our resource guide has a step-by-step guide on how to conduct an audit. And then there's corresponding worksheets that you can use for that. So we highly recommend that. The other part of that is the reconciliations. And we had a question about why that isn't in the bylaws. Again, the bylaws mainly are, again, what it takes for you to maintain your 501c3 status. And that's the reconciliations are not required. However, monthly reconciliations have also been part of our recommended procedures and, of course, good financial management. It's important that everybody be transparent about the funds. It's important that more than just the treasurer. As a treasurer, it's always nice to know that somebody else is interested in the work you're doing and wants to share in helping to make sure that the books are up to date and correct. So we are recommending the reconciliations always. And now again, since we've been working with AIM, it is again a requirement to maintain that policy. So if you do feel that you've had a loss of funds for any reason, when you reach out to AIM, the first thing that they're going to want to see is these reconciliations and the audit that they were done. So you have done your part of saying we did our best to financially manage our association, but unfortunately we hit a snag. So one part about that, of course, yes, the reconciliations you should be reviewing each month and then signed off. And so our newest recommendation for that is those of you as you start your new year is don't wait till the end of the year to put together your audit committee. Your audit committee should be 3 or more people, 3 or more members, not including the treasurer, the president, if they're a signer on your account, or anybody related to the signers on your account. But get your audit committee set up right away, and they can also be your reconcilers. So they become very familiar with your books all throughout the year. And so when it comes time to do the audit, everything's in place and they can move quickly through it because they've already found maybe any things that needed to be corrected ahead of time. So it's really good practice. Usually at the beginning of the years when we have our volunteers coming forward. So get them while they're there and put them in place and celebrate them every month, being at your meetings and taking care of that reconciliation. So we are set with all the questions except for we saved the hired and non-owned auto questions for the end, but we still have some time to answer more questions, but we are going to address some of those that came through now. As Jamie presented and just talked about, transportation is considered a red light. And really, again, that has been a longstanding tradition in PTA that we do not take on the hiring of or chartering of buses for transportation for field trips, et cetera, directly through the PTA. It is our recommendation, highly recommended, again, to limit risk, to grant those funds to your school district through your Board of Ed, have them accept it with the understanding that the funds are to be used to contract for transportation / the field trip, and let them take care of that. A lot of districts have their own bus service. They have other bus services that they contract with, but because they are transporting the students and that they have all their guidelines in place, and that's the best place to be handling transportation. So again, if you were to take that on, and again, we highly recommend not, but what there have been some instances where it has been necessary. This again is a decision that nobody should be doing on their own. This should be an executive committee and preferably an executive board decision if you are going to do any kind of hired or non-owned auto. Obviously the non-owned auto liability, if it's somebody doing PTA business in their own car or such, this is a great part of that. The hired part is where the buses are. So buses would be considered hired. Chartering a bus, chartering a minivan, that's considered the hired part of it. I mean, that question came up. So if you are to do that, again, we recommend that you reach out to AIM just to kind of go through the process of what you're doing, have them give their opinion based on your coverage, and then again, make sure that all the facts are on the table before you choose to go ahead and hire that directly from PTA. I am just going to cover this question really quickly. So there's a question about hiring a limo bus to transport a few students to lunch, the bookstore, or an ice cream shop after school once per year. This is something that we typically discourage, but from PTAs, and not necessarily because you're hiring transportation, but that's a big part of it. But the other part of it is this is a few students that are benefiting from the PTA, and it really moves into the scope of private benefit, private inurement, which is against nonprofit law. So again, we want to make sure that the advocacy that we're doing and any fundraising that we're doing and the use of those funds goes to benefit the wider class that we serve, which is the students of our school district. So unfortunately with these that situation, and Kim, if you want to, I know if you want to give me an email, again, we can discuss it further, some other options there. I'm going to ask Jerry Ann if she wants to give a question for us.
Hi, good evening. I do actually regarding transportation. There's a scenario where we have it's a field trip for a particular grade, and the teacher sponsoring this field trip offered to provide the cash, and the PTA provide a check along with the tax exemption. Is that allowed? Because I've heard mixed response.
Okay, let's walk through that again. So there's a field trip happening.
The teacher provides the cash that they generated. The request was for the teacher to provide the cash to the PTA, for the PTA to provide a check.
Okay, so that's a no. That's a no. When you say the teacher is providing the cash, is she collecting that from the students?
However, they've done fundraiser, so I'm not sure,
Okay.
it's not clear exactly how the cash was generated, but it was being provided by the teacher who is responsible for organizing and planning the event. And the request was for the PTA to provide a check on behalf and then to produce it for the bus company along with a tax exemption.
And that's a no.
That's a
So
no, okay.
unfortunate, no. So again, what your PTA can support and do is what's approved as part of your budget. So if you as a PTA want to do, have an expense line for field trips, and then, once you have all your expenses identified and you do, fundraising to match those expenses, then you can again grant that money to the school district to say, yes, we'd like to provide X amount of dollars for the field trip for grade whatever at our school. Yes, you can do that. But what it's actually considered money laundering. And I know that sounds like a crazy term for that, but basically you can only have the money go into your account that is PTA raised by the PTA. So, and the same with your tax exempt number, your sales tax exempt number or your 501c3
Okay.
is only for PTA approved activities.
Okay, so that was a no for providing the check on their
Yes.
behalf.
Yes.
And also not covering the transportation, producing the check to the transportation company.
Right. Unless
Okay.
that's something that your PTA approved that expense as part of your approved budget, and then you take it from there. But if it's just somebody coming to you and saying, here, can you put this money in your account and then write us a check for it? That's a no. And believe me, it is not just in this situation. We're finding like a lot of schools where the staff do their like dress down day, or today's wear your school t-shirt, and instead of, and pay $1, and it's all going to go, the school collects that money every Friday for whatever reason. And then they'll often ask the PTA, here, can you put this in your account and then write us a check for the money? That is also a no. Again, only PTA
interesting.
funds
Okay.
can go into the PTA account.
Got it. But in terms of there's no sponsorship for bus anyways, in case that was
If you had that if you had field trips on your expense line and you worked with the school and they want you to help cover transportation, again, that would be a grant of funds to the school district, and the school district can make the decision if they want to use that money to hire the bus. And if they don't, they give the money back, and then the field trip probably doesn't happen, or they find another way to make the field trip happen.
Okay, but the PTA should not be arranging the transportation.
Absolutely, we would prefer that not.
Okay, got it.
Because it's just high
Thank you.
risk. It's just
Yeah.
a high risk.
Understood. Thanks for the
All
clarification.
right, thanks. So how much did the insurance increase from last year? So since 2018, the annual policy for one building was $300. And if you had additional buildings, like we talked about before, it was $200. And if you were a SEPTA or a SEPSA, $100. So for individual units, the increase is $50. Additional buildings and SEPSA, they have a $20 increase. The main part of that is, just the cost of insurance going up. And then but in addition, we were able to layer in a better D&O coverage, which Jamie outlined earlier. Again, rather than sharing 2.5 million across the whole state, each one of our units will have $1 million. I think one of the things that I never thought about before I was a PTA officer was the fact that that kind of insurance even existed. But once I became a PTA officer, it was a good feeling to know that we had this, and that that's one less thing for me to worry about as I'm doing the, volunteering at PTA, and it protects my family at home. Because without insurance, if something went wrong, it would be a personal suit could potentially be a personal suit against me that I would have to defend. And that certainly would be a barrier to a lot of people becoming lead PTA volunteers and officers. So I think it's a great thing to have, and certainly to have it be $1 million for every unit, rather than all of us trying to share 1,400 units, trying to share 2.5 million with a $50,000 deductible almost made it impossible for that policy to even be utilized. So that's, you know, kind of where we're at right now. Jamie, maybe you could talk a little bit about, this is always my kind of, not my favorite part, but, you know, we've always talked about how in the past liability was the main claims. And then over in the last recent years, claims have really shifted more to which one of our coverages.
Through crime. Yeah, we see, you know, the general liability claims are typically higher dollar claims because they're big, you know, medical claims or liability claims or suits, but the frequency happens more with crime claims. So, and it's most frequently embezzlement. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard me talk about this, but we have what we call a fraud triangle. And it is that they have the opportunity, so that they're the treasurer. They reason that they are going to pay it back, and they're well-meaning. So usually well-meaning. I mean, some people are genuinely embezzling funds purposefully, but they intend to pay it back, and they just don't ever do that. So you know, it happens a lot. And, you know, as many of you may have experienced with COVID and us doing more remote things, there's just a lot of stuff happening because we're doing so many electronic things, and, you know, people are, you know, under different challenges. And so we have seen the number of crime claims really increase as a result of COVID. It's like I said, it was increasing, as Patty said, prior to COVID. It overtook general liability as the #1 claim, but has gotten even worse, you know, as a result of COVID. So yes, it can happen to you. Let me just tell you, we see a lot of embezzlement claims. And usually it's, you know, somebody's using PTA funds to, you know, buy a little here, buy a little there, and nobody notices for a long time. So as Patty said, please do your monthly reconciliations, look for that. And the coverage is there so that if you're doing those reconciliations and somehow you still don't catch it, the coverage is there to protect you. But it's happening day in and day out. So crime insurance is really important.
Thank you for that. Would you be able to give us, because we're nearing the end of our time, but I'm kind of interested in this because this has been a kind of a somewhat contentious year in the educational world. A lot of issues bubbling up as a result of COVID and other things. Have you seen an increase in the social media, the need for social media liability?
To be honest with you, we have not seen a large increase in claims. We've definitely seen a higher increase in demand. So people are becoming a lot more active on websites and social media. And, you know, for whatever reason, you know, a little more concerned about it. And I just think it's really the level of activity. So, you know, we feel like that's a really important one as well. Hopefully that answered the question.
Well, so again, like a lot of what our insurance is, it's a comfort level. So again, knowing that you have that is something that, again, can be one more thing that you can, I know it's not like the prettiest thing to say, but when all of our units now are in the process, they have a nominating committee that's doing their work. Some have finished their work, but some are still working to find, you know, viable people that are interested in serving as one of our key officers that bear the fiduciary responsibility of the association. These coverages protect you so that you can make good decisions on behalf of the association. And so maybe this is something else that we can talk about when we're reaching out to people to say, you know, you're interested in the mission of PTA, you show good skills to become a leader. We want to let you know that if you stepped into a leadership role, we have these protections for you. And then again, in general, you know, we're asking everybody to go back and think about that comfort level. And if, you know, the amount that the social media coverage is, if that's acceptable to you, it might be something that you want to consider.
Absolutely, especially if you're having a lot more activity that you didn't have before. And as you said, it's a comfort level.
Great. Well, our time together is just about up, though we, I think, have a few more minutes if you're willing, Jamie, if you have time. I don't see any more hands up, but again, if somebody has a question that they want to ask now, we've covered everything, I think, in the chat. Just going over my list really fast. If there's somebody that wants to unmute or jump in. Okay, what is the time frame to do the monthly reconciliations? I mean, that would be, they usually happen at maybe the monthly meeting, but I think within 5 to 10 days, within 5 to 10 days of receiving the bank statement would be reasonable. And again, it's important that the reconcilers are not just looking at the bank statement to say, oh yes, everything balances, because pretty much it, without, you're basically there looking for maybe checks that haven't been cashed yet. But what you really want to be doing is you want to have your year-to-date report with the bank statement to say, okay, well, we just had, our fundraiser last month that they said we raised, we took in $20,000. We want to make sure that we see on the bank statement the $20,000 has been deposited. So it really is a little bit more of a sophisticated thing than just checking off all of the lines on the bank statement. But yes, reconcile it for sure. There is not currently an official reconciliation form. It is in process, but we don't have one available for PTA, though most people have a reconciliation form that's part of their bank statement, and then that's an acceptable use. It's usually like on the back of it, and you can use that. But again, that's checking off the things that appear on the account statement. But again, we want people to also be looking at the activity in the PTA to make sure that, again, money that was supposed to get to the bank, which is typically how a lot of our crime does happen, the money that was supposed to get to the bank actually did get to the bank. Yes, the basic coverage does cover the fidelity bond of $50,000 with a $250 deductible, which has improved greatly over the years. I mean, when several years back, our deductible was much higher. I think it was over $1,000. So we've been able to, again, working with AIM, keeping our risk down, we're able to bring those deductibles down as well to get better policies. So it used to be almost, it would be difficult sometimes if your loss was only like $1,000 or $1,500 to make a claim because you were, most of it was eaten up by the deductible. I do want to mention though, too, if you do have to make the claim, if you do feel that you've had a loss of funds, the other part to that would be a police report. Again, and if you are aware of a loss of funds, before you do anything further, contact your region director for guidance. They're totally prepared to help you with that, and then they'll help you through it. And again, then they'll help you with making the police report if in the discussion you find that that's the direction you want to go. Okay, let's see, but they are just a few more chat questions came in. Yes, there is this reconciliation form. I think there is a link here to a reconciliation form, but I think we're working on one that's a little bit more detailed. Forgot that one was there. Can you request? Yes. A treasurer's books should be transparent to all members. So again, you can ask a treasurer for things at a meeting, any member could, and a treasurer should have all those things available. But if by chance they don't, they should make arrangements to get the information to the member who is asking a question about the finances. Transparency is everything, especially now in this day and age. A PTA should be able to share what the members are supporting. So yeah, that's a yes. And I feel like I was going to say something else. Bank statements. Oh, we will be updating our insurance guide. So as you all know, we have the New York State PTA resource guide with various chapters that you can use for guidance, how to run your PTA board, what you need to know about bylaws and procedures. There's one for finance. We have a separate one for insurance that we work with AIM to do. It will be a much more detailed information than what we shared in the slideshow tonight. But our current one is available on the New York State website, our current resource guide section on insurance. And then we'll update it as with all of our new enhancements, and that'll be ready to go July 1. Okay, well, Jamie, I want to thank you very much for being here tonight with us. We really do appreciate your time. I know it's a busy time of year for you, working with all of the parent groups, especially all the PTAs that you work with across the country, because I'm sure a lot of them all start on July 1, like us. So I know it's busy. So thank you very much for your time. Again, if you have further questions related to anything that was stated tonight, or as this process rolls out, you can reach out to myself or Dana Welch, who is our membership and insurance manager, who, that's her position at the New York State PTA office. So Monday through Friday, she's there to reach out to. Emails are great. She has just provided her email in the chat. And again, mine as well. Dana and I work closely together to answer questions, so we welcome them. And if there is no further business before us, we want to thank you all for spending the time with us tonight, and look for our the renewal information to be coming out shortly. Either by the end of this week or early next week. And we look forward to seeing those policies come rolling in.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you all.